Stefan, what is a unified design build team?
That's a great question. So you're not going to see that in a lot of the industry. And I really chose those terms specifically. And for us, we actually are a unified team. We have architects in-house, and we have construction managers in-house and some field staff. And I really wanted everyone to feel like they are a team and understand that we are a unified team. And it's not just a design team and a build team, that we are, in a sense, together and a unified process. So it's really critical, actually, as a distinguished value for our company, that we understand that we're unified. And so that the builder on the team has just as much impact on the design process as the architect is going to have on the construction process. So there is a way that we work together and create alignment between the design and the budget from day one. Because if the architect really understands the construction side of a project and the builder really understands the design intent, then in the end we actually get a project that's on time, on budget, and it's beautiful, inspiring, and met the original goals.
So it sounds like there's more continuity in your process.
Construction and architecture is an ancient trade. And there was a time when you had the master builder, and the master builder was essentially someone who was an architect, engineer, builder, everything in one person. It's relatively simple to be unified in that space. It's also difficult to get all the aspects right, the finances and it's rare that you get an individual who can do everything, right? So you got to bring a diverse team together who has expertise in the kind of pricing and finance, unit pricing, that sort of thing, and someone who understands the design, the aspects of design, and someone who understands the construction piece, and figure out a process to align them and get them within playing well together, but also align them so that they understand they're on the same team and that they all share the same goals.
Are healthy living systems significantly more expensive than traditionally built homes?
Well, it really depends on how you measure the cost first, and it also depends on the measures that you take. So what I was saying about measuring the costs first on healthy living systems, there's the actual upfront, go to the store, buy the materials, buy the plywood or the OSB, for instance. And this is a good example. You could get plywood that's non-urea formaldehyde, so there's no added urea formaldehyde in the product. Or you can get a product like OSB that might have a lot of urea formaldehyde in it. And there are workers that are going to be working with that material, cutting it. They might have masks. And there's also going to be people living in the building, and with air pressure changes in building, you can get a lot of the off-gassing of the formaldehyde into the space. So the OSB might be inexpensive up front. What's happening cost-wise for the health of the worker or for the health of the occupants? And how is that being amortized against health cost bills and that sort of thing, healthcare bills, workers' comp claims down the road? And so I think there's a lot to be considered there. At the same time, you can look at cost-neutral options many times over, and you can find things that are relatively the same in cost, but just one doesn't have all of these toxins, right? And so you look at a lot of raw products, like concrete as a raw product, even though there are multiple components, it's relatively few. And you can look at wood or glass, steel. A lot of those are really innocuous as far as once they're in the built environment. And you don't necessarily need to choose one over the other, but you can consider how many more natural, just raw components you have in a building, and how you can eliminate some of the things like vinyl, which is, not only does it have a lot of dioxins in the production, it also releases a lot of volatile organic compounds while it's sitting in the home, like flooring and that sort of thing. So it can be great for a durable, cleanable surface. There's a lot of really great durable, cleanable surfaces. And there's a lot of decisions to make when you're putting the components together for a home. In a lot of ways you can optimize those decisions, even on the upfront costs. And if you just look at every single thing on a one line item cost only, upfront costs on every single material and driving that to its lowest common denominator, you're going to end up with an unhealthy home. So inevitably there are going to be expenditures you're going to need to make. Could the home be smaller to save up that amount? Absolutely. We don't all need 4,000 square foot homes or 5,000 square foot homes. If we can afford them, fantastic. If you would like a healthier home and your budget's tight, then maybe a smaller home is appropriate. So it really depends on how you measure everything. And I would say, unfortunately, we don't look at cost holistically enough when it comes to healthy materials. Because I really do think, the impact of asthma and respiratory illnesses, especially in children, and that sort of thing has an impact in the long term. And without measuring that, we aren't really having a full understanding of cost up front. So I think that's important. Sleep at night, and that sort of thing. Volatile organic compounds just even in our air can take away from the amount that we sleep well. Your question said healthy living systems. Mm-hmm. So that's not just, in my mind, materials. It's also things like ventilation. And ventilation is typically an added cost because typically we aren't ventilating a home. We might have a bathroom fan, and bathroom fans are nice. They get rid of the steam from the mirror and the smells and that sort of thing that you can have in a bathroom. But it's not essentially ventilating the home. It's not making sure that my bedroom at night is going to be highly oxygenated and that it's going to be free of a lot of the carbon dioxide that I'm breathing out, or that my wife is breathing out, or that our dog who's at the end of the bed, or my daughter who runs in at 1 a.m. You get a lot of occupants in a small room pretty quickly, and that's a lot of carbon dioxide. And there are a lot of studies that show high elevations of carbon dioxide in your air takes away from your ability to sleep soundly throughout the night. So you could go to bed for 8 to 10 hours and feel like you've slept for 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. And so that's lower productivity at work. That's lower productivity at school. If I'm not as productive as I can be at work, that's a lot of cost to my business and, to our family income. So it's actually, I think, really important to have properly ventilated homes. Most homes are all negative pressure. So you have the vacuums everywhere. You don't necessarily think of them this way, but the dryer, right, for instance. Where does the air come from on the dryer? It just comes from around the laundry room. And then we blow it outside the house. We all see the duct that goes out. There's a lot of things that have ducts that go out in a home, but they don't have, the intake is essentially the ambient air of the space. So when you suck air from inside and you blow it out, it's got to come in. But then it's coming in through whatever cheap materials we decided to put in those wall systems, and then gets inside of the home. It's picked up dust along the way, fiberglass products from the insulation, or the dog that lived in the house last time. It's dander and things get stuck in those walls too, because there is air moving through those systems, even on relatively tight homes. So you get all this ambient dust, you do blow it back out through the dryer or through your furnace in some cases, or all these other different components, your kitchen hood, your bathroom, but every time you're doing that, you're sucking in more, you're replacing it, and you get all these suspended solids in the air. So we like to put in full ventilation systems. And my favorite would be a heat recovery ventilation system. And that's where you provide fresh air to all the living spaces, and you provide fresh air to all the bedrooms. And we're exhausting from the kitchens and the bathrooms constantly. So that bad air goes out and the good air is constantly coming in. And when they cross paths, you take the heat out of the air that's leaving and you put it into the air that's coming in. This would be on a cold day. And it does it through this nice big magic box. They're about, suitcase size, and there's a mile of this cross flow. And that warmth gets dumped into that stale exhaust air. That warmth from that stale exhaust air gets dumped into the fresh air coming in. And you get fresh, conditioned air. You lose about a 0.5 degree to 1 degree of temperature on the really efficient systems. And you end up with fresh air constantly in a home.
So a much healthier home.
Much healthier home overall. I would say if there is one thing you would spend more money on homes, or monies that you should consider investing in for a healthy home, would be a full ventilation system. Absolutely.
So what would the cost of a system like that be?
So a heat recovery ventilation system. Now, generally we're putting those systems in because we've reduced the energy load on the building considerably. They're really airtight, they're super insulated, and generally don't have the same type of furnaces or heating systems or cooling systems that you traditionally would have. So we're dramatically reducing the cost on that side. That said, the best systems for like a 2,000 square foot home, you're probably looking at upwards $12,000, $16,000 for a full system like this. There are a few things we're trying to manage in a building, and one of them is just fresh air. The other one is relative humidity. And for human health, 50% is perfect. In places like the Rogue Valley, It's relatively dry, especially in the summer months, but year-round, relatively dry, and that's difficult to do. You might just consider, when you're boiling your pasta, not turning on the fan hood, or when you take a shower, opening the door of the shower and just letting that kind of steam dissipate, because it actually is going to be fine for the building. As long as you're around 70 degrees and that 50% relative humidity, it's going to be pretty safe.
Are there a lot of companies like Greenhammer Construction in the Northwest?
One of the reasons why I think that we're unique and there aren't a whole lot of companies like ours is that initially when we started, it was I was trying to do things that weren't being done regularly, like utilizing Forest Stewardship Council certified wood products, because I thought, responsible forest management was a nice thing, and that energy efficiency and water conservation is kind of where buildings are going to go in the future and what we're going to need to do. And not only that, that health and comfort are some real nice benefits. It was really the direction that we need to go if we want to have, healthier, more comfortable buildings that are more inspiring. Because we would often have clients who would come to us asking for these complex, unconventional goals, and then we'd send them off to an architect, and sometimes there'd be some confusion on that end as to what we might be able to deliver on the build side, and we'd get back a project that was maybe watered down, or sometimes there was a lot of interest and we'd get back a project that really looked well engineered and didn't particularly look beautiful. So I thought if we could actually marry that process up and create a unified design build company, then we'd be truly unique in the ability to deliver these complex, unconventional goals that are trying to create better buildings that are also beautiful. So because of that, we're really unique. And there are a couple companies, I would say, in the United States that are similar. At the same time, our process also of aligning ourselves along the path really sets ourselves apart toward following a budget and toward creating great results. And I think that's extremely unique.